Hey guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It is Monday, August 23rd. I hope you had a good weekend. On Friday, I told you that there was a hard deadline in the Josh Duggar case, and his attorneys, if they wanted to enter any motions for dismissal or an evidentiary hearing, it was due on Friday. Now, I said I would check to make sure to see if everything was due, and then bam, 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 his attorneys filed 5 motions. 3 for evidence suppression and 2 for dismissal. And these are pretty wild. Now, I also on Saturday then asked you guys if we should do a live stream or if I should do a shorter video. And then after going through all of the evidence, I realized it might be easier to digest if we do smaller, shorter videos on each specific topic. So this one is about the most ridiculous, and that is requesting a full dismissal of the case, blaming Donald Trump for the illegal appointment of the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and thus vacating and dismissing all of the claims because they say that this Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security was not properly placed in the department and therefore null and voiding all investigations under them. Blame Donald Trump. You guys, this is the same family that had Trump put into their lawn. So they actually weed whipped and mowed the name Trump in their yard, and now they're going to blame him for illegally putting someone in the Department of Homeland Security. Now, the backstory here is not debatable. There was a secretary that was in charge of the Department of Homeland Security that was put in an acting capacity and technically was not serving legally on the case. And actually, he ended up resigning in early 2021. There was sort of this dust up at the Department of Homeland Security, and one of the secretaries, or the secretary at the time in 2019, resigned from his position. And when that person resigned, technically, they are supposed to present a new cabinet member, because the Department of Homeland Security is a cabinet member. All cabinet members are supposed to be confirmed by the Senate, and that's not what happened here. And instead, they bypassed some rules so that acting members were serving in an official capacity. It's very convoluted. An oversight committee, the GAO, actually did an investigation which determined that these guys were not sitting on the Department of Homeland Security legally. Whether or not this will affect the case, I don't think it will, because technically it would null and void any investigations that were done, any of that. It would set a massive ripple effect cascade. Like if they were to grant this for Josh, they would have to grant it for literally everyone. And Josh's attorneys seem to recognize that this is a very unusual request and likely who knows. But at the end of the day, this is what I'm going to give you just a very high level of what they're asking. So they say that the motion arises because the prosecution resulted from a criminal investigation conducted by the Department of Homeland Security, during which all times the agents investigating Duggar were working under the authority of purported acting Secretary Kevin McAleenan, purported acting Secretary Chad Wolf. This was an HSI case, a Department of Homeland Security case, correct? Yes, this is correct. Yes, sir. Question. Okay. And at all times, you were working under the authority of the Department of Homeland Security, who was in charge, correct? That is correct. Yes, sir. So those are questions that they asked Mr. Agent Faulkner at the bond hearing. They say that the Government Accountability Office said in August 2020 that the resignation in April of 2019, the official assumed the title of acting secretary had not been designated in order of succession to serve upon the secretary's resignation. Because the incorrect official assumed the title of acting secretary at the time, subsequent amendments to the order of succession made by the official were invalid, and officials who assumed their positions under such amendments, including Chad Wolf and Kenneth Kusilny, were named by reference to an invalid order of succession. So when he resigned, they were supposed to put someone else in place, and that's not what happened. And they're trying to use Agent Faulkner's testimony that they began the investigation of May of 2019. And he says Faulkner supervised this investigation on behalf of DHS and HSI and testified that this was an HSI case that at all times. The federal investigators working on this case were working under the Department of Homeland Security. whoever was in charge at any given time. Here's the thing. The fact that they're going to try to request that this gets thrown out because the acting secretary had not been placed there properly and the succession of order was not established correctly and it was null and void. They're trying to say that any investigations under him are null and void, and that because of that there's like this constitutionality clause that states that any investigations done by a bad appointment should be dismissed. So basically what they say, because the acting secretary during the investigation of this case by DHS, HSI in violation of the appointments clause and in violation of federal law, this indictment should be dismissed. It's unconstitutional under the appointments clause, and they were unlawful under the statutory framework of temporary appointments. They want them to take judicial notice, and they said, or he can establish at an evidentiary hearing that neither one of them were nominated by the President of the United States to serve at the Department of Homeland Security or confirmed by the Senate for the position, and that they can be accurately and readily determined from sources whose accuracy cannot reasonably be questioned and therefore subject to judicial notice. So they say the proper remedy is dismissal because they say that the Supreme Court has found a violation of appointments clause. The court rejected the notion that individuals should nevertheless remain subject to actions of those who acted without power. And they also say that they use a bunch of arguments about why this should be passed. At the very end, it says this: Duggar readily acknowledges that this is an unusual constitutional challenge in federal criminal court, but that should not factor into this court's analysis. Rather, this court should conclude that the GAO and a district court have already concluded that the head of DHS at all relevant times during the DHS HSI investigation in this case was occupied by two people without lawful authority. As the actions by DHS HSI in this case were all conducted under the authority of individuals who were acting as officers of the United States in violation of the appointments clause, the applicable federal statutory scheme for temporary office holders, the investigation proceeded without lawful authority. Because appointments clause violations are structural in nature, Duggar need not show prejudice to obtain relief. The court should therefore dismiss this indictment. So here's the thing, you guys. This was actually not just a Department of Homeland Security investigation. This was a joint investigation, and it was all overhead by the Department of Justice. So when you actually look at his indictment, so even though they're using statements that Gerald Faulkner made, basically saying that this was a Department of Homeland Security investigation, if you look at the indictment, which was actually released by the Department of Justice, not the Department of Homeland Security, it says that this case is being prosecuted as part of Project Safe Childhood, a nationwide initiative to combat the growing epidemic of child exploitation, and which was launched in May of 2006 by the Department of Justice, led by U.S. Attorney's offices, Project Safe Childhood marshals, federal, state, and local resources to better locate, apprehend, and prosecute individuals who exploit children via the internet, as well as identify and rescue victims. So the case was investigated by the Department of Homeland Security, but it was a Department of Justice full investigation. So it was part of a Internet Crimes Against Children task force. So it says it was being investigated by Homeland Security Investigations in Fayetteville and the Northwest Arkansas Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, the ICAC Task Force. So the task force is basically 61 coordinated task forces, which represents 4,500 federal, state, and local law enforcements dedicated to investigating and prosecuting. So basically, even though the investigation was done through the Department of Homeland Security, the full oversight of this task force is actually through the Department of Justice, meaning the Attorney General. And my guess is that because of that, his request is not going to be really anything but dismissed, because in my opinion, and I'm not an attorney here, but the Department of Justice is a separate branch of the government, and knowing that it was a joint task force operation, the probability of this getting dismissed simply because the top person at the DHS was illegally in office. He wasn't the one that actually ran the investigation. The task force has been in office since 2000, has been established since 2006. When you go to Project Safe Childhood Home, you actually are brought not to the Department of Homeland Security, but to the Department of Justice. And the Project Safe Childhood Home basically states that the Department of Justice oversees the entire project, and it involves multiple different law enforcement agencies and federal, state, and local resources. So a federal resource would be HSI investigators, not to mention Faulkner, who is an agent of this case, had been an agent with the Department of Homeland Security for more than a decade, and the probability that a secretary in Washington would be overseeing a minor, technically a minor crime in terms of like what they deal with in the Department of Homeland Security. Like, this is a branch of the government that deals with domestic and international terrorism and like massive cases related to human trafficking. And so while child exploitation material is a serious offense, in the grand scheme of the investigations that DHS oversees, it's not like the top. It's one of many separate branches. So the idea that some guy in Washington who's making like instrumental changes to policies was overseeing this case seems very slim to none. Additionally, the Project Safe Childhood guidelines they've been using and the investigational tools that they were using during this time have been in place for years. So nothing has really changed. And then the indictment doesn't come from the Department of Homeland Security. It actually comes from the Department of Justice and the federal judge who signed off on the warrant. There's just too many like people in this wheel. You would have to then go to the federal judge, vacate all the warrants. You'd have to get rid of all of the indictments for every single person that was indicted during the time that these two people were in there. It would just make a ripple effect that makes zero sense. So to me, this seems like a massive Hail Mary. And I don't see a court going in favor of this. But again, they will try anything, and it's Josh's attorney's job to present any weaknesses in their case to try to get him out of these charges. But the idea that they are actually blaming Donald Trump, to me, is hysterical. So do you think this will go anywhere? Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.